I'm going to move on to safety while cutting and the operations that go with that now. First cut I'm going to demonstrate is a cross cut. That means I'm cutting directly across the board. Now typically on a job site I wouldn't be able to clamp things at every place I need to, but the safest way and the best way is to always clamp your material. So I'm going to show you that. And the reason why is if you start cutting across and your material moves on you, you're going to get a kickback right away, or you're going to have to adjust yourself to the material, both of which are really hard. So the best way is to keep it clamped safely, either once or twice. Now I have to decide if I want to cut on the left side of that line, on the right side of that line, or right on the line. And then I have to decide where my material is going to go when it falls. So on here, obviously that side, the bigger side, is clamped, so when I cut on this side, the little tiny piece that falls is of no concern to me. The problem is when I do it the opposite way around. If I was to clamp a small piece and then cut the large piece, when it falls, has the potential to pivot right across the blade and pinch the blade, and that's where I can get a kickback. So you always want to cut off the smaller piece. On this saw, I want to cut the little piece off, which means I probably want to keep this larger piece. The problem is, if I want to leave that piece, that means I need to have my blade on this side of the line. If my blade's on this side of the line, I can't see it very well. If I bend over to this side, I have to look through that small little spot, and it's very dangerous. So typically what I do is I walk around to the other side, where I can cut on here. The problem with cutting on this side is that I only have a small piece of material on here. So the saw is balanced, the shoe is sitting flat on this piece I'm going to cut off. So when I get to the other side, that little piece is going to fall off and my shoe is going to get unbalanced. One option I have is to use the left hand saw. And now when I stand on this side, the majority of my shoe is balanced on the material stock that I'm keeping. Not everybody keeps the left-hand saw, and generally use the saw that's in front of you. This is why I'm demonstrating this. You'll have a number of situations that come out where you have to pick the best possible scenario out of the circumstances that you have. What I would do if I wanted to keep this material and drop this one is I would put both hands on this side and watch this side as I cut that off. If it's a really small piece, I would stand on this side and I would balance it as I cut through. Both of these are not optimum situations, and so I have to pick what's best and what I'm most comfortable with. When you're first learning how to saw, neither of those are good options because you don't know how the saw is going to react when that little piece drops off. For this safety demonstration, I'm going to cut on the right side of that line so that I can see the line as I cut and show you proper technique when using the saw. If I had a cord, I would need to make sure my cord was out of the way. I've been in a number of job site situations where somebody has cut through the cord, and that's always embarrassing. Typically, I always want to keep two hands on the saw at all times when I'm cutting. Sometimes it's easier to see my line when I'm cutting to not have this arm in the way. With two hands, make sure I have proper feet placement to cut through the whole cut without having to step. If I have to step, then my cut may move. So unless I'm doing a ripping cut, I want to keep my feet firmly planted so that I have a good balance as I cut through. I'm going to look where the blade touches the piece of wood and line it up. The problem is, as soon as you turn the saw on, it has a little kick and it moves just a little bit. When I do that, my saw is going to move away from that line. So the best thing to do is once you turn it on is to look down, reline it up by seeing the spinning blade on the line, And then as you cut through, you can either watch your fence if you understand where your shoe detent is, or watch the blade the whole way through the cut. First thing I'm going to do before I start cutting is I'm going to make sure I have my safety glasses on. The problem with a skill saw is the blade is coming up towards you. So when that blade rips through the material, it's actually throwing material towards your face. The circular saw is one of those machines that you really need to make sure you're wearing your safety glasses every time you use it. Every time I haven't, I've done it before, I always get something in my eye, and then I have to stop the cut mid-cut, which is really dangerous. The other thing I need to do before I start cutting is I need to adjust my blade height. If I was to cut through this piece of material right here, the blade sticks almost 1.5 inches past where my material is. This is really dangerous because if something is sticking like a cord underneath, I have that potential to rip through it. The other problem is if something does go wrong, there's even more blade exposed. Rule of thumb is you want one tooth sticking through the material. You want the bottom of the gullet to be just past your material. This usually means you want the tip of the blade about 1/4 inch past your material. I lock my shoe height in with the blade sticking about 1/4 inch past or in the gullet.